From WHYY and Billy Penn, it is Hittin season. Hey there, podcast pals. I'm John Stolnis from the Good Phight and Billy Penn. You can follow me on Twitter at John Stolnis. Once again, on the Monday night edition, Sunday night, Monday night edition, whenever we decide to record this thing at the beginning of the week, we're bringing it to you live with the video. It's not going to be live for you because we will have already recorded it, but you'll be able to see our faces as we do this edition of Hittin season. So sorry about that, but you chose to click on the YouTube link, so it's really, you have yourself to blame for this. But we're going to talk some Phillies baseball here as we get ready for pitchers and catchers. They report this week, gang, with the NFL season out of the way. Baseball season is officially here, and the Phillies pitchers and catchers and a lot of the position players will be in Clearwater this week. The truck already made its way to Clearwater, so we are getting you ready here for the start of spring training. And joining me to do that, my good friends Justin Klugh and Liz Roscher. Of course, Justin Klugh from Baseball Prospectus. Follow him on Twitter at Justin_Klugh. Justin, what's up, buddy?
I'm just laughing at, I learned from a news article that was formatted like a slideshow today that
those are so great.
Brandon Marsh's expectations that he's going to be ready for opening day following arthroscopic knee surgery really throws cold water on speculation that Cody Bellinger was coming to Philadelphia. So, you know.
Oh, that's what did it? That's what threw the cold water on it?
If you guys were dead set on a Bellinger starting in the opening day lineup, I guess all those times we were told not to expect that should have led to us not expecting that. Darn it. Wow.
Well,
there's a very clear line this offseason between like the local writers who are like, yeah, there's nothing going on, and the national writers who are like, the Phillies are in on everyone. Yeah.
It's a super secret thing they're doing, but you're not going to believe how active they are.
It's so crazy
that
only the sport's top super agents know, and they're informing me.
That's right. And Howard Eskin. Howard Eskin's the one local guy who's like, they're going to sign somebody. They're going to sign somebody. And, you know, we've talked about it. They might. But if everything that has happened so far is exactly what like Gelb and Zielecki and Lauber and Alex have all been saying all offseason long. Like, it's going to be a lot of guys at the back of the 40-man roster who have options for flexibility. That's exactly what we're getting with this team right now. Liz Roscher from Yahoo Sports also joining us. Liz, hi, how are you?
I'm good. John, thank you for asking. It occurred to me tonight for the first time that as we do this on video, I am now no longer able to do things like my nails while we do this. Me
too. Same.
I have ADHD, and commonly, while we record the podcast, I need to be doing something with my hands. And it's my nails or whatever it is. And now, I mean, unless you guys want to see me actually glue on my nails.
Do your nails.
While trying not to look stupid on camera and talking about the Phillies. That might be one too many things. Try to control my face.
Some specific midwinter episodes where people probably would have preferred to watch you do your nails to us talking about nothing going on with the Phillies. But now you can learn to play a keyboard with your feet.
That's right. This is going to be instructive as well as entertaining, which is you don't get that from any other podcast, folks.
Listen, opening day week, I'll be putting on some press-ons that are baseball themed. So get ready, everybody.
Me too. That'll be fun. We'll all enjoy that. All right, let's get into some minor Phillies news to start off the podcast here. The Phillies signed another depth pitcher here this week. As we're recording on Monday, they signed Spencer Turnbull. Actually, they signed Spencer Turnbull, trying to upstage the Super Bowl, as the Phillies often try to do, bringing aboard this former no-hitter thrower on a one-year deal for $2 million, plus another $2 million in incentives. He was with the Tigers last year, 31 years old. Was non-tendered by them earlier this offseason. He was very good in the pandemic year and for the first part of 2021. In 20 starts during that stretch, 8-6 with a 3.46 ERA. Again, I mentioned he threw a no-hitter in May of 2021 against the Mariners. But then he started undergoing arm trouble, elbow trouble. He had Tommy John surgery. And then last year, he made just 7 starts for the Tigers. He was on the injured list because of neck discomfort and a cracked toenail. So, again, very different injuries for Spencer Turnbull and kind of a lost season for him last year. And so what we're looking at here is another guy like Kyle Allard, who's somebody that They can move back and forth between AAA, somebody who can be that sixth starter. If somebody goes down, you call somebody up. Spencer Turnbull, Kyle Allard could be one of those guys. Of course, they also have Nick Nelson down there. They signed Max Castillo to a contract very similar to this. So Liz, they've been gathering these guys like squirrels finding acorns leading up to wintertime, right? And trying to squirrel them away up in their little tree nest up in Clearwater, so that when the bad times happen during the course of the 2023 season, they can go run back to their nest and they can call up Turnbull or one of these other guys.
Wow, this metaphor is the length. You're getting your money's worth out of it.
I'm a little lost.
Can you tell that we were on a little bit of a Chip and Dale kick with the kids right now?
Just a little.
So Liz, what do you make of this?
Was there a question? Okay,
no,
I
want you to talk about how impactful the Spencer Turnbull signing is going to be.
Oh my God. I had forgotten this had happened until you mentioned it about 90 seconds ago. It's good that they have depth at AAA. I feel like that might be something that's been missing over the past couple of years. Mm-hmm. Or am I wrong? I feel like they haven't had at least a lot of starters to call up from AAA. Like
they've been better at it, and it's the ability to call up a guy when they needed him has sort of been better the past couple years, and it's been a discernible difference, I think. Because
Chris Sanchez last year was the prime example of that.
Yeah, Kirkering, he's an example. Cody Clemens, he filled a role when called upon.
Oh God, yeah. Again, another guy.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about.
But the point is that these guys do play a role in a long 162 game season, and again, what we've seen is Dave Dombrowski going on saying we got to get guys with options, like adding these guys that you can send down to the minors, you can call them up, and the fact that they don't have a spot in their starting rotation, so you can't get somebody who's maybe more established than Spencer Turnbull. Who knows what Spencer Turnbull is going to give this team this year? He at one point was pitching very well for the Tigers. Again, through a no-hitter. He has shown that he has good stuff in the past. When he was at his healthiest, throwing 95 miles an hour. He was a guy who had a pretty nasty sinker. He's a ground ball guy. Only gave up 4 home runs over 106 innings during that stretch I was talking about a minute ago. So he has shown an ability to be able to pitch well at the big league level. It's just a matter of, is he healthy? And he's going to start off the season in AAA, barring something unforeseen and something we don't want to see in spring training, like somebody getting hurt. But it also relieves the pressure on Mick Abel having to pitch above his skis in AAA, right? They can just kind of continue to let him progress and let him grow. And if he pitches his way to the big leagues by owning AAA, then great. But you got all these different guys so that if Christopher Sanchez goes down, if Taijuan Walker hits the injured list, if heaven forbid one of the top 3 guys goes down for a little while, you have something there. And with Kyle Allard, he's a young guy with decent stuff who's never had any success. And in Turnbull, you have a guy who has had success, and it's just kind of a question mark as to what he's got left.
I feel like I have to point out here that over the last 3 weeks, I have heard Colby Allard referred to as Cody, Corey, and Kyle. And I think it's a testament to how little people remember that signing happened and their awareness of the person who was signed when they were signed.
Yeah.
I think the Turnbull signing is, like a lot of these, good depth piece, but with the nature of it being that you don't really know if it's a success until months from now when he's had the chance to pitch and, perform or step up if the opportunity arises. But you're absolutely right about one thing, and that's that his Turnbull's health is really the linchpin of his entire career at this point. All the success that he's had has come in these these brief windows where he's been able to find a groove and pitch consistently. Like he mentioned the no-hitter, which it's hilarious how the Phillies' new type is guy who can throw the game of his life followed by never pitching on that level again. But
yeah,
that's the kind of he in college when he was at Alabama, he took a no-hitter into the 7th inning of a game that got called for weather. So he's been able to pitch deep and pitch well when he's been able to stay on the mound, but then he just runs into these shoulder issues and elbow issues, and like you've said, the toenail, of course, the shoulder of the foot. This is the kind of stuff that keeps him off.
That's
the
what they
field and
teach you in
prevents
medical
him from-
school, by the way. The shoulder of the foot. That's exactly what it is.
That's what prevents him from getting any kind of consistency. So the most important thing for him this year going into training camp is that he's got a clean bill of health, which we are led to believe that he does. So that is the key for the Phillies, because he's got an arsenal that he's always messed with. It's always been a little fluid. His fastball, I think, topped out at 96 when he was younger. I'm not sure where it is now, but he had a curveball in the mid 70s, a knuckle curve at one point, a slider that like cut at the end that actually looked more like a cutter. So like he has a lot of options. He has a lot of weapons, and he seemed like a guy that was going to be a part of the Tigers' future for a while. I think just injuries really ate away at him. And that's the kind of guy, when you're looking for guys who are like filling a role that doesn't necessarily exist, who are going to spend a lot of time in AAA, who don't know, how big of a job or a job at all is waiting for them in a major league bullpen, who need someone else to get hurt before they get the opportunity they're really after. This is what Dombrowski was talking about when he was like, we're actually not a premier destination for the biggest names on the market. So that has also played a role in this whole image that the Phillies just are staying away from the bigger names. They've made some big attempts to get guys this year and have not gotten them. But I think that comes down to this. Like, they have roles for guys like Spencer Turnbull. So I feel like with the Phillies trusting themselves a lot more and kind of looking for these more fringe guys a lot more this winter, they've earned a little bit of trust. Don't get me wrong. I'll come on this show. I'll do the video episode and go absolutely nuts when none of these guys work out, or they all like forget their gloves before they come to training camp. Like if this doesn't work out, you will hear about that. But for now, this team has a pretty decent track record in the past couple years. Dombrowski obviously has a long-term track record. They're targeting guys that aren't the sexiest names, but that's kind of the position they're in and the approach they're taking. And I think Turnbull's as good an option as any.
Yeah, after the opening series, first week of the season, when they get swept and lose 5 out of 6, and Turnbull's got a 7 ERA, and Max Castillo is in a fetal position behind the mound because after getting bludgeoned to death, we'll be talking about it. But I think
always looking for that silver lining, man, aren't you?
I was just reminding myself of last year when we came into the season feeling real good about things, and Texas and New York came and
we don't have to be embarrassed about feeling good. I feel like
I know
we don't have to talk about that either. Who brought this up?
Remember when we felt good and then immediately after it felt bad?
Felt really horrible for weeks on end. It was, yes, I do remember that actually. And I want everyone else to.
That'll teach us to ever feel good again.
That's right.
We've got to get out of the habit of just routinely remembering the times we felt bad, because those are no longer the only times we have in recent memory. And that's tough to, honestly, that is tough to remember. It's tough to accept that. No, my most recent baseball reference is not unending pain and 99 losses or whatever it is. It's a different type of pain, one that has a lot more happiness and fun times baked into it. We have to stop doing that.
I think the Daily News headline
opening day was bad, but
for signing Spencer Turnbull should have been Super Bowl with apostrophe BULL.
That would have been both a timely tie-in to the big game, which I see where you're going with this, and a very funny play on words. 100% golf clap agree.
Thank you. I forgot to say that before, and I wanted to make sure it was on the record. Thank you.
It's on the record now.
Video and audio. It's on the record, pal. So they've made a flurry of these moves the last couple of days. They got, like I mentioned, Max Castillo. They claimed him on waivers from the Red Sox. They designated Simone Muzziotti from the 40-man roster in order to do that. He had a 4.43 ERA in 7 appearances for the Royals last year. The Phillies got Michael Rooker, a relief pitcher from the Cubs, and basically they're replacing him with Andrew Bellotti with Michael Rooker on the roster. And then they got Diego Castillo. They claimed him off waivers from the Yankees. He's been on a few different rosters already here in 2024. played most of the season last year in AAA, has good speed, not much power, good on base percentage, so plays all over the place. So there's a few of these different guys, and we know, guys like Jeff Hoffman were signed to a deal like this last offseason. I mean, there is a possibility that one of these guys, two of these guys, who knows, could be impactful, could actually make a difference here on the 2024 Phillies. And really, frankly, if you're going to be a good team, you need guys like this to step up and to play some kind of a role here in 2024. So of these different guys that we've been talking about over the last week or so since they signed them, who do we think is going to be more impactful? Liz, which of these guys do you think just, we're taking a total shot in the dark here, but which of these guys do you think will help this team the most in 2024?
I'll say, I don't know. I'll just say Spencer Turnbull. He's thrown a no-hitter. It seems he's also the last guy we talked about. I remember him really well. You can just rewind the podcast to listen to more of what's been said about him. He's pretty great. I actually really liked this signing. I thought it was, I feel like there's a lot of upside to be had. And it's one of those signings that I now realize the Phillies can make and actually make good on. They can get out of him what they want instead of just being like, well, let's cross our fingers.
Yeah, Justin, I mean, that's kind of where I'm leading to. I'm intrigued by a guy like Kyle Allard simply because he's young, but you can be young and bad. And so far, that's been
Colby, man. I just said it was Colby.
What did I say?
You called him Kyle again.
I don't care. I didn't realize you were talking about me the first time. Yeah.
Oh, excuse me.
I don't know why I've got Kyle Allard in my head. Is there another Kyle Allard playing in the major leagues that I'm like totally? Now I've got to Google Kyle Allard and see if there's somebody that I'm thinking of. Colby Allard. I'm sorry. I think he's going to be great.
His brother might be named Kyle because Roger Clemens. No, wait. I'm now thinking of Cody Clemens. Never mind.
Yeah, you are thinking of Cody Clemens because when I typed in Kyle Allard into the Google search box.
None of us can talk. Why can none of us talk?
We're so intimidated by the camera.
Yes. Out of the Google search box, the first was Kyle Allard obituary, Jacksonville, Florida. So I don't believe we're thinking of. As soon as you said his name, I'm like, maybe there's a Kyle Allard somewhere in the NFL, like, because that's a name I feel like I've heard, but it's not.
It's not. No,
Definitely
it's totally
it's
a name I've created out of the figment of my imagination.
Colby
Allard.
I can't wait for Colby Allard to throw the last out of the playoff clinching game this year, and for us to go back and play the clip of us not being able to get his name, or just
Don't say us, me. Just
a
point the finger here.
A montage of all the different first names I've heard people give him over the past 2 weeks, and he's going to save the season. You just mark my words. Mark this time code down. Because I'm going to say him so that we all don't say Spencer Turnbull, who I also think is perfectly capable of giving the Phillies the depth that he was signed for. But Allard is he's another interesting case, has some upside. When they signed him, I think I said that he was the kind of guy that you bring into these roles because he has this documented strength as a control pitcher that he's been able to use like every level he's been promoted to. He's always been very young, so he's able to like catch on fast at each new level. Problem was making that transition from AAA to the major leagues, but I feel like the Phillies are getting him with the gift of more time having passed. Like he might be, he's never been more experienced pitching in the majors than he is today, I guess you could put it. Even with that experience being as abbreviated as it is, he's still a guy who has like some pitches that can serve as out pitches. He does not throw hard, but he is able to trick hitters and keep them off balance. And, this is a guy who was once a top Braves prospect, so there's obviously a talent base in there to take advantage of. And I want to start looking at these guys as filling the role that they're brought in to fill because, the perspective keeps being like, well, he's not the guy I've heard of, so clearly this isn't going to work. And
right.
that there's plenty of guys you haven't heard of you're never going to hear of because they just aren't that good. But this being a Phillies podcast and these being Phillies players, I do think these are the kind of moves that, like you're saying, John, can really wind up making or breaking your season at the end of the day. Like you have these guys you bring up like Orion Kerkering, like Jeff Hoffman, who step up in ways you weren't really expecting and become this integral part of your bullpen. And I think Allard he's an interesting case. I kind of want to see him pitch because he's also a different kind of pitcher than the Phillies have typically gone after the past couple of years. They like these hard throwing veterans, and these guys that they've been picking up are like, they're a little more about floating the ball in there and making it go wherever they want rather than throwing it straight through the catcher's torso. So I'll be curious to see how they are faring at AAA and if it does wind up being the kind of depth the Phillies want them to be. But as far as I can see, they're getting this handful of guys that all can fill that role.
Well, mark down a vote for Kyle Allard there. Kyle, we are in your corner here on Hittin' Season. I'm wishing Kyle nothing but the best here in 2024.
I got you back, Colby. Don't worry.
I'm going to go with, I'm making an argument for Roscher. And I know he's older than a lot of the guys we're talking about, but I think he has had the most major league experience last year, was on a major league roster for most of the season. If you're talking about guys who can make an impact, bullpen guys probably have a greater chance of doing that because there's so much volatility in the bullpen. Like nobody thought Jeff Hoffman was going to be a savior really in the playoffs and towards the end of the season last year the way he was. And I don't know that Roscher has another few miles an hour on his fastball that they seem to discover with Jeff Hoffman. So there may not be that kind of transformation where they come into camp and Michael Rocker's throwing the ball and everybody all of a sudden is going, ooh, because he's never been that kind of pitcher before. But he's been a relief pitcher who has an ERA in the upper 3s, lower 4s. He typically stays healthy. He will come in and he will help in some moments this year that could be important. And so I think there's more of a chance that he has a role in the bullpen than maybe some of those other guys do, making spot starts here and there. So, but Roscher, I'm going with Kyle with everybody now. Michael Roscher is certainly not a superstar, and he's certainly not, he's like the very definition of league average in terms of strikeouts, walks, and ground ball rate and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes a league average guy in your bullpen is better than somebody who's lighting everything on fire as soon as he gets in the game. And so it's not a ringing endorsement of Michael Roscher, but
let me ask you guys this. So these kinds of signings that we're talking about, that get little blips on MLB trade rumors or a tweet from a beat writer and then kind of get forgotten. So let's say in regulation, you got to get like 4,300 outs in a season. How many outs does one of these guys have to get for you on the mound for you to consider him a truly impactful contributor?
That's a good question. So let's say if it's one of these starters, okay, that he has to come in and maybe fill in for a couple of weeks. Let's say you need one of those guys for like 3 weeks or something like that. So you figure 2 starts a week, maybe 3 in some of those weeks. So you're looking at maybe 7 starts from somebody like from Allard or from Turnbull. So how many outs is that? I mean, you're wanting 5. You're wanting 5 innings from those guys, maybe in those 7 starts. So I'd say like 35 to 45 innings. I think is kind of what you're hoping that each one of those guys can give you. I don't think you want either of those guys or any of those guys to give you any more than that, because if that happens, then something has gone very wrong.
And they're also overexposed at that point, too. Because being the kind of pitcher they are, they're probably not finely tuned for major league to face major league hitting all the time. And at first that's like an advantage when guys aren't familiar with your repertoire, but then as they catch on, second, third time through the order, they're going to be able to smash you a little harder. So I think that's probably the window. Honestly, you don't want to go too much more or less.
Yeah. But I think that's a good question. And when you put it that way, it makes you realize, we're not asking these guys to help get out and push. You know what I mean? Right. Like they just hold the wheel.
Help us pack the van.
Help us pack the van. Or sit in the front seat and hold the wheel while everybody else pushes and make sure we don't drive into a tree, You
can pick the music.
That's right. Colby Allard, you're the DJ. That's how this is going to go on this trip.
Gas, that's your job. Gas
that's right.
And snacks.
That's right. So let me ask you guys this. So I don't know that there's any more moves that are coming for the Phillies this offseason. Like we've said at the beginning of the show, the beat writers were telegraphing these kinds of moves for the last few weeks and essentially telling us Dombrowski's going to make a few more moves, but they're going to be depth signings for the starting rotation and for relief pitcher and maybe a bench guy here and there, and that's exactly what we've seen. So I think I'm operating under the assumption that the heavy lifting is done. They're not really going to get Jordan Montgomery. They're not going to go out and sign Tommy Pham or some other outfielder like that. The Brandon Marsh news, it doesn't seem like it's moving them to do something else. I still think they need to add a depth piece. I'm starting to grow more enamored with the idea of even Michael A. Taylor, a center field backup in case Rojas doesn't work out. He was worth 2 wins above replacement last year. He had a 914 OPS against lefties last year. Michael A. Taylor did, which shocked me. He had 21 home runs last season.
That can't be true.
It totally is.
He's like a low guy. He's one of those tall, thin guys who can just knock the crap out of
he's one of those little reading
off lefties. Yeah.
Nationals,
Was
Michael A. Taylor?
Yeah, the Nationals, Michael A. Taylor.
All right. Well, I mean, you could do worse, but when you say, like, if Rojas doesn't work out, what do you mean by not work out? Like, is there a point where you think the Phillies would put bait on him? Like, would they stop? Would they pull out? Because I'm trying to think of how bad he'd have to be for them to be like, nope, no more.
They need him to be good enough to be a 9-hole hitter. That's not a very high bar.
Exactly.
And every report has come out that he has been working all winter long. He knew that from the word go when they were like, he's going to come into camp. He won't automatically have a job. We're going to wait and see how he's improved. And he knew what that meant. And they told him, pick up a bat and don't put it down. And he seems like he has put in the time. And every report from Dombrowski is that it's going fine. So I think they really like him. And I think they are expecting to be penciling him into the lineup. I don't know if I'm that worried about a backup center fielder as directly as you're describing. I'm more just like a general depth option is, I think, now a good idea. And Liz and I kind of talked about this, that the whole bench bat outfield guy was like number 3 priority over the winter as far as roster acquisitions go, and then it kind of drifted away, and now this surprise, Brandon Marsh had knee surgery. Like a doctor jumped out of a bush and gave arthroscopic knee surgery. That has, I think, made it a little more urgent to get one of those guys in there who can fill that role. But I don't think it necessarily has to be like a guy whose job is going to be filling in for Rojas when he doesn't get done.
Yeah, then I was just looking around. There are a lot of guys. There are a lot of guys who are still out there and still available on the free agent market. So there's, even if they do decide they want to get one, there's still time while some of these guys find jobs elsewhere. So how would you guys grade the offseason? We're starting, spring training is going to start here in a couple of days. The offseason is essentially ending here. I saw the Good Phight put out a poll on this, and I think it went about where I thought it was going to go. Justin, as far as a grade for this offseason, how would you grade the Phillies offseason?
So I think I'm going to go with see, and this is the not fair part, because when you sign big name free agents, you have a general idea of what they're going to do. And the guys that they have signed are kind of just question marks that hopefully work out. And if we had known that was going to be the plan going in, not that they should have told us, but I don't know, it might have kept a few hysterics from going off this offseason if the Phillies had been like, we're not really going to, don't expect to see us throwing our hat in. We'll do what we always do, but don't get excited. There's no Trey Turner signing this year. Anyway, all this blithering to say, I am kind of like between a B and a B minus, and I want to just throw the B minus on there because then it feels like that minus represents my little frustration in a totally unthrilling offseason. But at the same time, this is a team that's gone to the NLCS twice in a row. And I know everybody can project all of their personal fears and frustrations onto a baseball team very easily. We do it all the time. I think I'm just seeing a lot of that this winter. Everyone being like, well, that was it, and they didn't improve, and now they're terrible. And, oh well.
Yeah.
It's over.
But I don't necessarily see it that way. I think this is going to be a good team that should be expecting to make the playoffs, should be expected to make the playoffs, and added where they felt like they had to, but didn't go over the top. So the minus is representing my personal frustrations. I'm giving them a B because, it's tough not to feel like they didn't lag behind everybody else, but they didn't. They kind of just kept pace in a slow market.
Liz, grade.
I mean, they did what they needed. They did what they needed to do, which is and it's not flashy or exciting. And I think I've been vacillating between a B and a B minus because that it just feels like the right place for them to be. And like you, I would put the minus on there just for not living up to. Well, I mean, I guess it would just be not living up to everyone else's expectations because my expectations were pretty low. It was sign Aaron Nola, don't do anything stupid. The end. Like they re-up Jake Cave, and that's fine. That could qualify as something stupid.
It's not fine.
That's not fine.
No, considering everyone hates it, but like the Phillies, he's just like Rojas. He's another guy that they just love. And they're gonna be dudes that they love and can't get enough of. And I think, it could be worse.
I think you mentioned Nola. They will never get credit for re-signing Nola.
No, they won't, and they should.
For the
Exactly,
simple
that's what I'm
reason
saying.
that he was here already. Like
Yeah.
that's no one. I really kind of forgot to factor that in.
Yeah.
I was waiting for you to mention it, and I'm giving the B because you can't go like that was their main signing, and they had to have him. They had to have him because if they didn't, Blake Snell would already be a Philly.
Yeah, we would have been, I think, more excited if they signed Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery, maybe than Aaron Nola, because it would have felt like a change, and people wanted to see something different happen because they didn't like how the season ended, and Aaron Nola's last start in the playoffs was not a good one. Forgetting all of the great starts he had before that in the previous 2 rounds and in the playoffs the year before. He's been kind of up and down in the playoffs. He's been great and then had a couple of start. You know who else has been like that? Just about every other starting pitcher in playoff history. I mean, like a Justin Verlander. Look at, Max Scherzer has had some games. Clayton Kershaw, for crying out loud. Just even last year, Jordan Montgomery was phenomenal in some of the games. And then he had against I think in the ALCS, he was kind of terrible. Or in the World Series, he had one game in the World Series where he was not very good. So, they have there's very few guys who are great not everybody's a Madison Bumgarner in the playoffs. And so that's just, or Zach Wheeler. Zach Wheeler's pretty great in every single start. Aaron Nola has been a very good playoff pitcher. And you're right. I think it would have felt like more of an offseason if it had been somebody other than Aaron Nola who had gotten re-signed, which kind of leads me to my question. I agree with you guys. I think a B minus is about where I have them as well. What would have been an A? What would have been an A offseason? What could they have done in order for this to be an A offseason?
Ohtani, definitely.
Well, and I was actually just going to say, like, the offseason is over, but it's still...
It's not, though.
It's not, because everyone's like, why isn't the Zach Wheeler extension happening? Oh, no. Now that pitchers and catchers are reporting, and Zach Wheeler will be at camp with the Phillies and Dave Dombrowski instead of at his own home in the off season. Now that they're occupying the same area, there's a better chance that one could get done. And I don't know if that would. It's another Nola situation where I have no idea how that would change people's perception of how this off season has gone. But I mean, I feel like it's more likely than not, considering how slow the offseason has been, that they'll actually get a deal done with him before the end of spring training.
Well, and Gelb has reported that it had to wait until the spring in order to not affect the 2024 luxury tax.
Exactly.
So,
everyone's like, where is it now?
I'd rather freak out about it, honestly. I'm more comfortable.
It's more fun that way.
Yeah. I honestly, just real quick, I do also think that plays into people's hysterics this winter, is that it's easier to create sports content when you are hysterical. So people just kind of get themselves to that state in order to create things and write blogs and stuff.
Well, really, all content is either hate or fear driven. So
I think you see that a lot. But I will say, to answer your question, John, I think if they had thrown all that, like when Dombrowski was like, we threw a lot of money, more than people think we did, at Yamamoto. If they had convinced him that Philadelphia was a cool place to be, I'd give him an A just for that. Like getting Nola and Yamamoto would have been a huge step forward, I think. So that would have gotten him to an A, and I think that's probably the closest thing to a realistic scenario, like that we have documented from the Phillies, evidence of it actually happening. Ohtani was like, obviously, that's
going to happen. Yeah.
Bellinger, even, like, that's not.
What's to say? Is there anything that could still happen? Because there are guys out there
If they
that would
signed
push
Jordan
it to an A.
Montgomery, I'd give
That's
him
what I was
a-
thinking. That's what I was thinking.
I'd bump him up to an A.
Yeah,
if they got Montgomery. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that gives them a better starting rotation than anybody else in the National League,
Oh, yeah.
including the Dodgers.
Yes.
And then now you've got a fighting chance over 162. Yeah, now you can. It doesn't make you on par with the Braves, but it gives you, it certainly gives you a big boost, and it would be an off. It would be one of those Dave Dombrowski coups as you're getting close to spring, as you're getting into spring training. That I would definitely bump the team up to an A if they landed Jordan Montgomery.
Do you think, seeing what they, the low-key approach they took to the offseason, do you think this is evidence, or pretty much the Phillies directly telling us, that they don't plan on contending for the division, and that they're pretty much assuming they're going to get a wild card spot?
That's such a tough question. What are you doing?
Because I don't know what I think about that question either.
Yeah,
it just popped into my head like,
I don't think it means that they've given up. I don't think they're settling. If they thought that they could seriously, actually improve their chances of competing at the top and get it, and it depends on how hard they think that first round bye, how important they think it is. I actually would love to hear Dombrowski talk about his strategy on that a little bit, because it is a legitimate question, and I would love for it to not be so verboten to talk about, because it is just a fact that the Braves have an incredible lineup and they will probably rule the NL East. But I think people would jump down his throat if he said, yeah, we're working towards the wild card right now. And I don't know if they'd be totally wrong, but that's just the reality of it. And hearing him talk about it doesn't mean that he's not trying to win. He's trying to win given the scenario that he's in and the parameters he's been given.
I think he would say, our goal is to make the playoffs. And I think that's what it would be. The overarching goal is, because it's a long season, a lot of different things can happen. And I would say that they probably believe that they can catch the Braves in the National League East. And the rationale for that would probably be the fact that last year, the Phillies, you can expect Trey Turner not to be terrible for the first 4 months. The hope that Kyle Schwarber also, once again, doesn't take the first 2 months of the season off. You had the World Baseball Classic last year, which messed up Schwarber and Turner and Real Muto getting started on the season. And then you didn't have Bryce Harper for the first month, and then for the next month after that, he wasn't himself. You have a healthy Bryce Harper hitting the ground running. Kyle Schwarber won't be in left field. He's going to be in a spot where he needs to be DH, so that should help you both defensively, and it should help keep him healthy and hopefully help him get off to a better start. And the thing that I've been saying all offseason, and again, I don't think it means that the Phillies are on par with the Braves. The Braves, I think, still have a much better roster, a better roster, not a much better roster, a better roster than the Phillies. But there is going to be some regression to the mean with that Braves offense. They are not, as a team, going to slug over 500 next year. Matt Olson is a home run hitter, but I just don't see him hitting over 50 again. Orlando Arcia's offensive season last year came out of nowhere. He was never that kind of an offensive performer.
Plus,
you have Acuna.
He went insane in Philadelphia, and I mean, the fans made his brain shatter into a million
Made his brain
pieces,
shatter into a million pieces, and that's that's just what was wonderful.
Yeah.
But I
He's
mean,
a lost cause.
That's right, he's done. And yet Sean Murphy was red hot in the first half of the season, and then he cooled off after that. So you have some of these. Look, Acuna's going to be great. And he may repeat his season from a year ago because he is that good. And Olson's going to hit 40 home runs. That's for sure.
Albies.
But Ozzie Albies is a good player too. But he may not have quite the offensive season he had a year ago. Eddie Rosario's not on the team at this point. He's still a free agent who's sitting out there. So they're missing that guy. And really, the only upgrade they made, they got a couple additions for the bullpen and Chris Sale.
Chris Sale. I was going to say their big addition was Chris Sale, and the whole idea behind that deal was we think he can reach this level again, and if he can, that's really going to help us out in a playoff series. There's a bunch of ifs and coulds and maybes involved in that. Like, that wasn't like we're signing Chris Sale and he's the Chris Sale from 2018. Like, nope.
Right.
No, that was in a lot of ways that was a depth option. It was just one everybody had heard of. So you kind of talked me into it there with a couple of those reminders that the Phillies did improve this offseason. It wasn't because they signed all of the good players available or even like one new megastar like last year. it's because they're moving pieces around to have a more ideal kind of approach, and hopefully aren't going to have the same health and or luck issues that they had last year. Because you're right, that's the kind of stuff that doesn't happen every year. So yeah, that actually, at the end of the day, I don't think they're too far behind them. But yeah, you can't put them up there with the Dodgers and Braves just yet. But what? The Phillies have proven they can beat the Braves. It's just the Braves win more games in a 162 game schedule, but then the Phillies just handle the Braves. So if you can just do that instead, why tire yourself out winning 110 games?
Exactly. I mean, the MLB experience is a marathon to get to a sprint. That's what it is. You have to get to the top, or as close as you can to the top, over 162, to get the chance to run as fast as you can for the finish line over the course of 4 weeks. And like last one standing at the end wins. And the more I've watched over the last few years, especially since the Phillies have been involved, it really is that. It's just how many rounds do you have left, to be effective. And, if the Dodgers win the World Series, it will be because they continue to acquire players solely so they have extra reinforcements who are literally like some of the best players on the planet, just sort of sitting there waiting to be called upon for work.
Right. It's like, because it's a privilege to go play for the Dodgers. You're just like, yeah, I'll be the fifth outfielder, and I'm a 10-time All-Star. Sure thing, you bet.
Sure, I'll pop up in 20 games and get a World Series ring. Why not?
Right.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Though I will say, even despite saying all of this, that if the Phillies, went out and signed Jordan Montgomery tomorrow, I would also support that. Because
yes,
and that I feel like is with this argument I've presented. Like, do you think they're just kind of saying without saying that they're going for a wild card spot? I guess it's the signing of somebody like Jordan Montgomery, partially because he's the only guy left available. Is that would that be the difference between the two, of saying like, yeah, no, we're good with what we have, all the factors that you just said, John. We think we can make the playoffs and approach it that broad. But if they went out and if they went over the top, would you consider Jordan Montgomery, signing him over the top, like they have the pitching they need right now?
I was just going to ask, do you really think that the Jordan Montgomery signing is the difference? Because it seems like...
That's what I'm asking, And
I totally get the question, but it feels a little... When you just put it like that, it's like, is Jordan Montgomery the difference between the Phillies wanting to win a division and not?
If they signed him, I guess I can just see in my head a couple of writers, maybe national writers who aren't as plugged in, but saying the Phillies are really they're going for it. They're going all in on winning the NL East because they signed Jordan Montgomery when they didn't have to. It's not that it's Jordan Montgomery. It's that it's the guy who has this talent level, who has the reputation he has now because of what he did in the postseason, and they're bringing him in along with Aaron Nola, along with Zach Wheeler, along with the depth they already have.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say this about Jordan Montgomery: he's been very good for the last 3 years. It wasn't just last year. He has been a mid-threes ERA, solid middle of the rotation left-handed starter for the last 3 seasons. Very consistent. So you're getting a true middle of the rotation starter. You're probably getting a guy who's better than Ranger Suarez at this point, in his career. So you probably, now you've got Ranger Suarez as your number 4, and you're not worrying about Taijuan Walker. I mean, there were some stretches of the season here when you had Taijuan Walker and a number 5 starter, and it was kind of bleak in a lot of those different moments. I don't know how the rotation would shake out if you added Jordan Montgomery at this point. But I think I think you're right. The national writers would say, yes, Dave's going all in. And I think Dave Dombrowski would look at it as this guy's just sitting there. He's costing way less than we thought he would. The commitment to us is just too good to pass up. You don't have to give up draft picks because he was not given a qualifying offer during the last offseason. So you don't have that attached to it. It was too good a deal to pass up. I don't think in Dave Dombrowski's mind it's a difference in approach, but I do think the perception from the outside would approach it that way.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I was considering, are the national writers really just going to follow the bright, shiny keys? Are they indeed that devoid of original ideas? And I realize the answer is yes.
Yeah,
like,
yes,
I
yes,
really
yes.
didn't want to. I didn't
they're-
want to assume that they'd be like, they're signing Jordan Montgomery. This is it. They're in. They're at the top, baby. They're going for it. And I'm just like, are they going to chase those keys? Yes, they will, because it's February. It's February 13th, and Jordan Montgomery is still sitting out there.
They're
John
copying-
Heyman copy-pasted.
Yes!
Are you about to say this? Okay. Copy-pasted an agent's memo into
Yes.
a tweet with medical evaluations available upon request at the end. Yeah, they'll follow the keys no matter what corner of the room you throw them.
It's exactly what I was going to say. It's exactly what I was going to say. All right, Liz,
What an embarrassing
let's get
man
on to
he
our
is.
final. Yeah, he didn't win the Sports Podcast Award, and that's one of the reasons why. So let's finish up the podcast here, Liz. Liz has is it a Where Are They Now book? Liz,
Yes.
explain what we're going to be doing here for the last segment of the show.
I'll take it from here. I just sent you to a screenshot of the dudes that we have, the Phillies dudes that we have to select from today. This is a book that I found on archive.org called Phillies, Where Have You Gone? By Fran Zimniuch. 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 Published around 2004. I have to dig up the acknowledgments at some point to read those because it's very interesting. So we've got guys who have been around who spent 1 year at the Phillies, 2 years. Larry Christensen, 11 years. Kurt Simmons, 13.
Oh, yeah.
Wayne Twitchell. So I have a little log line for each of them. If you have seen them, we've got. Would you like me to read them out and you guys can choose, or would you choose them?
Well, I think we can just go off this list. I'm trying to think. Kurt Simmons, I think I wrote a feature on him for Baseball Prospectus. He was the last of the Whiz Kids before he passed away this year. And isn't Frank Thomas just recently died too, but isn't he the one that tried to hit Dick Allen with a bat or got hit? It was him and Dick Allen got into the fight at the batting cage.
They certainly.
I'm sharing the
mention
list here
this.
for everybody in case for people watching on video.
Ooh.
There you go. Yeah, Gene Garber has his face in a oval picture frame in the relief room in Hatboro, Pennsylvania.
That's right.
That's what I remember about him. He's prominently featured.
Prominently featured in the relief room. Of course he would be. So what are we doing here, Liz? Are we picking one of these guys, or
pick one, and we'll see where we land after I read one to you.
Let's go.
Go ahead, Justin.
I vote Garber. He's from he's from my hometown. I'll say.
Let's do Gene Garber.
I picked what I thought was the most interesting fact about these guys, and the one for Gene Garber is he's from Lancaster.
It's about the most exciting things that happened in Lancaster.
There are some good ones in there. All right, let me dig up.
Please come by Lancaster these days. It's a different city. All right, you weave around the horse and buggies.
That's right.
You got to be a little patient with them. But
I got to say, Liz, the one that drew my attention was Rick Bossetti. Mm-hmm. Did he pee in the outfield?
We can get
I'm
to
curious.
Him. Yeah, we'll get to him if we want to do Gene Garber first here.
Let's do Gene Garber first.
All
Let's do
right.
Gene Garber.
So we got Gene Garber. We've got some stats on him. He pitched. He was a pitcher for the Phillies, Royals, Braves, and Pirates. He was born in 1947 in Lancaster, PA. 19-year major league career, 5 years with the Phillies. He made his debut in 1969. Gene Garber was a hard-working, side-wheeling right-hander with a corkscrew motion that he learned from Louis Tiant in AAA that confused and confounded many a major league hitter. Although he pitched effectively for nearly 2 decades in the major leagues, he really came into his own with his hometown team, the Phillies, in 1974 after some chances with the Pirates and Royals. I grew up a Philly fan, so it was a dream come true for me to pitch for the team, he said. My second game in the majors with the Pirates, I pitched in Old Connie Mack Stadium. It was a thrill for me to play there, and then later to play for the team and meet guys like Richie Ashburn and Robin Roberts. For the most part, Philadelphia treated me very well. Even when I came into town as a member of the Braves, the fans always acknowledged me as if to thank me for the effort I gave that organization. In his 5 seasons in Philadelphia, Gino won 33 games out of the bullpen and saved 51 more. But if there's one game that will forever be etched in his memory as well as the fans, it was
Game 4.
It was. It says here, Game 3 of the NLCS against the Dodgers on October 7th, 1977.
Yeah, Black Friday. That was Game 3, yeah.
Garber came into the game to hold a lead in the 7th inning and retired the first 8 batters he faced and had 2 outs and 2 strikes in the 9th when Vic Davalillo, thank you, laid down a perfect bunt for a hit. Unlike most of the regular season, Phillies manager Danny Ozark left Greg Luzinski in the game in left field rather than inserting slick fielding Jerry Martin. Pinch hitter Manny Mota hit a fly ball that bounced off of Luzinski's glove in the wall, and the Dodgers eventually won the game, breaking the collective hearts of the Delaware Valley. That was one of the strangest games I've ever been in, said Garber. It was the most memorable game I've ever been in. It was the most fun I've ever had pitching, and then the most nightmarish. I got 8 hitters out in a row in the 7th, 8th, and 9th, and then with 2 strikes, Davalillo laid down a perfect bunt for a hit. People asked me about Mota's hit, but when he hit it, I knew the game was over. The ball kept drifting, and Bull went with it, and it hit his glove, and he didn't catch it. That was the only time I ever saw him not catch a ball that hit his glove. Garber later moved on to the Atlanta Braves, where he was an outstanding pitcher for a decade. He still holds the Atlanta record, or at least as of 2004, for career saves with 141, and his 557 games rank him 3rd in team history after Warren Spahn and Phil Niekro. Even though it's been a quarter of a century, Garber will forever be remembered as the pitcher who ended Pete Rose's 44-game hitting streak on August 1st, 1978. Always the competitor, Gino pitched Rose tough, striking him out on a changeup to end the game and the streak. Immediately after the game, Rose complained that Garber pitched him like it was the 7th game of the World Series. He is correct.
Pete, gracious as
that
always.
is how
Yeah.
Gene
Pete
Garber
Rose
pitched
complaint.
everyone.
Yeah.
How dare this guy try to get me out?
Charlie Hustle complaining about someone hustling too much on the mound. That's
How
tough
dare
scene, Pete. Tough scene.
How
He
dare
played
he,
that game like he wanted to win it.
How dare he take his job seriously?
Only I can do things in baseball. Me, Pete Rose, the protagonist of baseball.
When the Reds came to town, I hoped for an opportunity to stop him, Garber said. I'd be less than professional if I didn't want to end the streak. Phil Niekro once told me to make every pitch like it was the last pitch I was ever going to make. Wow. That really stuck with me, and that's how I pitched Rose. I think any criticism he might have had about my pitching him the way I did may have had something to do with the fact that it was also the final out of the game, and he didn't have much time to compose himself before the post-game interview began.
That is a lot of grace.
That is a
to
charitable
award.
reading
Yeah.
of the situation. Thank
Yeah.
you, Gene.
Yeah.
Garber saved 218 games during his career using a variety of off-speed pitches. He saved 30 games for the 82 Braves, but also saved more than 10 games 11 times in his career. Following his baseball career, Garber returned home to Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, and became a full-time farmer. He and his brothers split their partnership so that a new generation of Garbers could get involved in the family business. Now Gene and his 2 grown sons, Greg and Mike, own and operate 400 acres. I think I'd like to be remembered for my longevity and for the effort I gave, he said. I wasn't a star, but when I was retired, there were only 4 active pitchers who had more games than me. I really felt that was a pretty good achievement for a small guy who didn't throw hard. I pitched every hitter like it was the bottom of the 9th inning in the 7th game of the World Series.
Pretty cool, dude. And I didn't know he was from Elizabethtown. You know, that's where I went to college. Elizabethtown College. That's where I went to school. I didn't realize that Gino was from E-Town. Interesting.
I dated a girl from E-Town for a little bit. So look at that. We're all
Wow.
connected to Gene
Connected.
Garber. in
I
some
thought,
way.
you know what? I thought we had a connection before, you know, having known each other for over a decade, but now
So
I'm
long.
fully convinced. Yes.
We have both been to a small town in Pennsylvania.
Right. We're known people who have been to a small town in Pennsylvania.
Right, yes. We're aware that it exists.
That it
Yes.
exists, exactly.
Do we want one more, or are we good? We want to pick it up again another time.
Yeah, let's pick. What do you got, Justin?
You're at the center screen.
Yeah,
at least
I'd
on
say.
my computer.
So I'm on the left on my computer, so it's very weird how we're all viewing this show differently from one another. Let's wrap it up there, so we can have some time for final thoughts here, and we can do some more of those. We'll do like 2 next time. We'll save a little bit more time. We got really into the Braves and talking about how they were going to take a step back this year, so I didn't get as much time on this segment. But I like this. This is really great because, Gene Garber, I just remember too from that game 3, threw a wild pitch made an error on a pickoff throw to first base, like right after Davey Lopes beat out that ground ball that deflected off of Schmidt. Rose grabbed with a hand and threw it over to first base, and Lopes was out at first base, but they called him safe. And then Gene Garber on the very next pitch tries to pick Lopes off. He throws the ball down the right field line. Lopes gets to third base and then scores on a ground ball single up the middle for the go-ahead run after that. So, Gene Garber, though, had a good career outside of that game. But I
glad
digress.
we could stir up your most treasured Phillies memories.
And by the way, I was 1 when that happened, so I've just, it's a YouTube, it's a YouTube tragedy, really, more than anything else for me personally. But all right, let's do some final thoughts here. Justin, final thoughts from you, buddy.
I'll just say buy your copy of the Baseball Prospectus Annual. Available now. A lot of good writing in there. A lot of good player comments. And it's essential for viewing the Major League Baseball season, which is right around the corner. So buy the Baseball Prospectus Annual. Give it a good review on Goodreads. Or actually don't. Give it like a terrible review with a bunch of snide comments in your written section. Those are actually much more entertaining to read.
Baseballprospectus.com is where you go to purchase that particular tome, everyone. So make sure you go there. You got to really start doing that, man. Yeah. You really start doing that.
Yeah, I don't have a shed full of them at my house. So you got to.
I was going to say, do we got to come find you? All right, Liz, final thoughts.
I would ask you all to please head to sports.yahoo.com to read my coverage. My coverage and my colleague Jay Busby, our joint coverage of the Super Bowl commercials. And today I also put up a 5 best and 5 worst. My favorite commercial of the night was a tie between the Dunkin' Donuts commercial and the YouTube commercial where a bunch of football players acted like their bird mascots.
Those were great. Yes. Yeah, the Eagles and the Ravens and that was funny.
They aired that one really early, and I think a bunch of people missed it, which is a shame because it until the Dunkings commercial came out, that one was my favorite. It's just like humans acting like birds, never not funny.
They did a good job too. The players really got into it.
They really did.
Funny.
It was awesome.
Yeah, that was good. All right, everybody. Well, look, that's going to do it for this edition of Hittin' Season. And folks, want to make sure that you check us out over at our Hittin' Season landing page for Billy Penn. Of course, our great partners with Billy Penn and WHYY. Go to billypenn.com/Hittin' Season so you can find all of our blog articles there. And of course, sports.yahoo.com for Liz, baseballprospectus.com for Justin. You can find my stuff over at The Good Phight as well. And of course, our Hittin' Season Patreon, where we've got The Dirty Inning and we've got Absolutely Hammered and other stuff over there. If you want to sign up and be a Patreon member, it's patreon.com/Hittin' Season. All of those different links will be on our YouTube in the description underneath the YouTube video. We're still figuring this all out, but we're going to get all the links under there so you guys can find all of this good stuff when you go check us out on YouTube. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time right here on Hittin' Season.